Hey there, Baruch. How are you tonight?
Yermi, tonight is awesome. It's great tonight. I'm awesome. I'm feeling awesome. I'm glad to be back. I know you're glad to be back too.
Oh gosh, I missed the going the live. I mean, even though we were really active on the chats and everything, but it's nothing. The energy is different, don't you
Yeah.
feel?
And this is a live. Like for everybody
This is a
watching,
live
this
live.
isn't
This
a
is real
recorded
live.
live that we're saying is live. Like we are live. Like if I were to open that window, you'd see how freezing cold it is right now. And there's ice falling from the heavens because we're so live. So
We are alive today, so thank God for that. We have a really remarkable, amazing guest today. And I mean, I'm so super stoked to really just introduce him already. And
yeah.
I don't want to waste any moments. And I just want to bring Al Cini into the room. And then we could get to introduce Al Cini and learn more about him. So, Al Cini, here he comes.
It's great to be here. And this is live.
I'll try and get triple confirmation.
This is amazing. Al, thank you so much for making the time. And, you know, as we told you before, we weren't so successful in the past 2 weeks getting our guests to come on live, but you were gracious enough to make the time to come here. And the energy is so different. And, you know, you're just an awesome rock star to have here today. So thank you for the time.
I appreciate the invitation. Great opportunity. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're definitely excited, and we got to. I love the pre-games. I'm telling you, Jeremy, that's going to be one of those things. Okay, I'm going to stop making decisions for us, but the pre-shows are always awesome. But let's jump into it because I want to share some of that love. I want to give everybody else a chance to meet Al. But to run through his bio, Al Cini is the managing partner and the creative force behind the brand and cultural alignment toolkit. Al is certified to administer and interpret several psychological instruments, such as the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, DISC, and the Thomas-Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument. But his greatest focus is using BCAT. I said that right?
That's you got it.
Perfect. His greatest focus is using BCAT to deliver insights and actionable guidance that help leaders and employees all row in the same direction toward a shared purpose. BCAT is the result of Al's career-long immersion in the effects of people, personality, and purpose on company culture. It's an interactive culture building tool that begins with the incorporating question. Imagine your whole team as though it were a single person doing its best work on its best day, keeping all of its promises and accomplishing all of its goals. And it's not in the bio, but I want to add this. Not just imagine your team, but imagine yourself functioning at that level. Al's going to be sharing ways that BCAT can help a company, no matter how small or large, find its North Star to keep morale high, productivity constant, and revenue strong. Very impressive bio. But the thing that's more impressive than your bio itself is you. Like they say in branding that, you know, you are your brand. Just from the 25 minutes we had ahead of time to kind of chat and talk, I see that you truly are your brand and you are everything that is written down here. Yeah. But again, nobody else was privy to that information other than Jeremy and I. So we kind of got that sneak peek. So let's start off by why don't you share with us kind of who you are and what you're all about, so we can all get to know you before we dive into the big questions.
That is such a great setup, Baruch. And one of the reasons why I'm glad to be here is I made a new friend already, and that is you.
Thank you.
It's really a pleasure meeting you. I've known Jeremy, and we've had a couple of conversations, but it's great to be here with the two of you. And philosophically speaking, I guess the three of us now working together have to think about how we can help a fourth person.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so really quickly, I grew up in a middle-class hood in South Philadelphia. I was never any particularly good at sports, but I was really good at getting all the other kids to come out and play. I was great at that. So as a child, I figured out that I had a natural kind of a gift for facilitating others without directing them, without forcing them, without having to coerce them. I was just really good at getting that red laser dot to herd the cats. I was good at that. And that's what I did as a kid. And over the course of time, I developed a career in technology and ended up a contract project manager at NBC Universal and used a lot of what I learned as a kid. I mean, everything you use today is based on something you learned years ago. I mean, our lives all accumulate that way. So everything I learned as a kid paid off in my adult life, in my early career, and then later in life. And all of that rolls up into this thing called the Brand and Culture Alignment Toolkit, which is my current commercial offering. And, as it plays out, well, you'll see as I'm going to give you guys an exercise to start with. And I'm hoping the people that are watching the program will play along. Because it's really the core exercise. So whenever you're ready.
That's awesome.
That is super exciting. So, so really, I would like to know, because I'm now curious, okay? Because you got I'm that curious cat with that little laser pointer.
No, that's fine.
So our topic is, the 7 whys. I'm curious to know, how does the exercise sort of play in with the 7 whys? We sort of started that discussion a little bit earlier, but how does it either enhance it or play into it, or could you explain a little bit the background of
let
the exercise?
let me set that up as a tie-in. Every great conversation starts with a question. Now there's a guy on the internet. His name is Mark Hunter, who's a sales expert. That's his background. And he's identified in one of his podcasts that there are 3 kinds of questions you can ask. Okay. One kind of question is a question that you know the answer to, but the other person doesn't. So, for example, if I tell you, did you know that only one third of all employees actually care about the work they do? Well, you would say, no, I didn't know that. And I would say, aren't you impressed that I did know that? And that's the end of that conversation. So, so that's common. I mean, if you're trying to sell somebody something, you'll start often with a question that you already know the answer to because you're doing a little bit of bragging, right? Mm-hmm. That's level 1. And he said, that's not going to get you very far because it's a dead end. That's a dead end question. The answer is pointless. So the second kind of question is, well, then you can ask the person you're trying to convince or sell a question that they know the answer to, but you don't. And his favorite for that one was, well, maybe you could tell me what it is that keep you up at night, which is like the number 1 sales question for rookie salespeople, right? And then they'll usually share that with you. But if you don't have a really good place to put that answer and you can't really respect the answer they give you, that's not going to go anywhere. So his point was, and he said, I know it's difficult. I know this is hard. But the really, really great questions in life are questions that neither the person who asks it nor the person it is asked of know the answer to. Those are the really great questions. And if you ask those questions in a way that respects the importance of the answer, both parties buy into the importance of finding the answer.
Wow.
And we agree it's a good idea for us to work together on that. In other words, I'm not testing you by asking you this question. It's not like I have an answer in my head that I'm going to compare yours to. And at the same time, I'm asking you this question and you're not being judged by your answer. So you should be able to just sort of answer it, even if the answer is incomplete. Let's work on that answer together. All answers that come back are incomplete. The purpose of the 7 whys is to complete an answer that you begin with the first. Start getting an answer early on, but that's an approximate. In order to really close the gap between the question you're asking and the truth you're seeking, you really need to keep diving deeper and deeper and deeper. Now, one of the things I learned working at NBC is that your typical television viewer doesn't actually go in for a lot of deep diving. I mean, your typical television viewer doesn't really think that way. So what you have to do is kind of engage them in something deeper without them ever knowing that you're doing that. And that is the essence of successful commercial television. And there's a model for it. There's a system for it that I'm willing to now that my non-disclosure agreement is I'm willing to explain it. And after I've explained it to you, you're gonna know every television show that you watch and why you like watching it.
Wow.
I mean, you're going to understand. And I have to tell you, the commercial value of this is at NBC, and this drove the other networks crazy. When I was at NBC would have to produce, let's say, 10 pilot television programs to find a hit. Everybody else had to produce 90.
Wow.
So CBS would have to make 90 programs to find one worth watching. NBC could do it with just 10. And if it takes $2 or $3 million to make a pilot, which it did, probably way more now, you're saving a whole lot of money and getting better products that are more engaging on the air quicker if you do it the way we did it. And that is essentially the model I'm using these days in the Brand and Culture Alignment Toolkit.
Wow.
So whenever you're ready, I will walk you through this process.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
people need a pen and paper? Like, what do we
No. Remember, your typical television viewer doesn't take notes in front of a television.
That is true.
That is
I'm
true.
not your typical television viewer, though.
Here we go. You ready?
I'm going to be monitoring the comments because I want to see how everybody also reacts to this. So,
Good.
guys, blow up the comments now because you're getting a secret that has been proven why people are watching TV. Al is going to explode it right now.
Television. If you're in the television business, it's a funny story too, but I'll tell you a funny side story because I'm about to tell you what the model is, right? And the model is ridiculously simple, but you'll be amazed by it. We used to have to tell people, we worked with content producers all the time. I mean, there were people producing police shows and teacher shows, and I mean, there's all kinds of stuff being thrown at us as pilot pitches constantly. And we'd look at the script and we'd say it doesn't fit the model. But the problem was we couldn't tell the person who wrote the script that it didn't fit the model because they weren't even supposed to know there was a model.
Right.
So we would just reject it. And they would say, but it's great. And we'd say, yeah, but it's missing something. And they say, well, what's it missing? And we'd say, you need a little bit more this or that. And we would have this indirect conversation with the content producer. And then they'd say, all right, I'll send you another draft. And they would go off. And now remember, we're not paying for this. They're paying for this. That's all we cared about. Eventually, by creatively rejecting the content we were getting, eventually we'd get a script that followed our model, and then we could produce it as a pilot. And
wow,
one time out of 10, it was a hit. So
wow,
and they would never know. They never knew. They just say things like, "Why are they not buying this? This is." Other networks would buy it. Yeah, they would buy it, and it would tank. We're not buying it because it's not going to work, and we know why. So you ready?
Oh yeah.
Okay, 1 second though. I don't know. We keep pushing off the secret. By the way, guys, I'm just letting you know now. We're for sure going to go over the 45-minute mark. Consider this your 45-minute freebie. Because this is gonna be big.
We're warning you. Whatever else you might have been planning tonight. You might put that aside.
Scrap your calendar.
I literally actually planned the freebie for tonight, but I'm going to be holding on to it because this is gold right here.
And so let me give you the example from my own life that triggers this whole thought process. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
When I was in my early 20s, I worked for a computer company in Hartford, Connecticut, and my job was and I was kind of an attention deficit disorder software engineer, write code, but doesn't like to be pushed into a box, kind of flamboyant, maybe a little crazy, and somewhat unpredictable character. That was my nature. And I was maybe 22 or 23 years old. And, I was getting along just fine that way. Thank you very much. And they liked the code I was writing. And most of the times it worked. Well, half the time it worked. I mean, I was a pretty good coder and I was getting away with an awful lot of really erratic behavior because I was a good coder. And then one day they put me in a room in an office with somebody from the computer company that sold the equipment that we use. And this person, older than I was, everybody was then. Now everybody's younger. But back then, everybody was older than I was. This guy was probably in his 30s, walked into the room, sat in a particular location, wore a certain kind of clothing. And before the meeting started, opened a briefcase, took out a document, a notepad, took out a really nice pen, and began taking notes of what everybody said in the room. Now, this is something this is way outside of my skill set. I'm random, flamboyant. I never write anything down. I vaguely remember what it is you told me. I act on that. This guy was very methodical, very organized, and he commanded the room. Everybody shut up, sat down, and looked at him. And he walked. He was there to solve a problem for us, and he did it by following a particular methodology that apparently I'd never seen this before. So what I learned from that is that by slowing down, by taking notes, by creating a presence in a room, you can influence other people in a room that suits your purposes, that works for you. You know, and if, in other words, if I were just a little less flamboyant and a little bit more organized and a little bit more methodical, I could be a better version of myself the way that guy obviously was a better version of some prior self he used to be.
Mm.
Okay. Now we call that person a role model.
Mm.
And what's cool about role models is while we normally just refer to it as a kind of a conceptual thing, a role model is a person who behaves. They don't become a role model because they teach you how to be something. They become a role model because they act in a way that you respect, and you imitate them, you mimic them, you adopt the behaviors that you respect of them, and that changes you. And half the time you change without even knowing it. You're not even aware of it. Okay. So there is this thing that happens in the human brain called role model patterning. It's been studied, and especially in early childhood education, it's how kids learn to be adults before they can even speak.
Wow.
I mean, it's way ahead of, it's so pre-verbal. You know, I mean, it's the deepest kind of thinking you can achieve because you haven't layered any crap on top of it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, it's pure learning. Yeah. Absolutely pure in the purest imaginable sense. So, okay, how do you use that? Okay, here we go. You ready? Here's the exercise. I want you both to think of a role model. Think of somebody in your life. You don't have to tell me who. Think of somebody, and if there are people watching or listening, think of somebody. You've got access to the comment section. So go ahead and think of somebody, give it some thought, somebody that impressed you so much with the way they behaved that you saw something in them that you then incorporated into your repertoire of behavior.
Jeremy.
Okay, here you go. Okay, now see, and if I know you're being serious about this work because we actually talked about this before the program, right? Give me one or two words that describe Jeremy as you were learning from him.
I feel like I should hide.
You should not.
If you want, I can use a different
Jeremy,
example.
Put him backstage. No, I'm over here.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead.
What's the word I'm looking for? Belief? I guess belief. Believing in another.
Oh, that would be like empathy or trust.
Yeah.
Oh, those are all great words. And you know, without getting too detailed in this, I would normally, in this exercise, if it were to play out, and it can take a while to do this, I would ask you what you saw him do that told you this. Because really, ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you know. It only matters what you do. Right. So whatever it is you do is who you are. What you do is who you are. And it's all about acts, not just about feelings, but about how those feelings drive action that influences other people. So there would have been one or two interactions you had with Jeremy where he communicated that to you by something he did that made him a role model. Okay. Right. Jeremy.
Yeah.
What do you got? Who do you got?
This is Baruch and I. We had this discussion about, you know, what our business model is based off. The Chabad Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, definitely my role model. I've seen him, like you said, the actions that he actually did was that in 1994 he passed away after 40 years of leadership. He led his community for 40 years. And in 1994, when he passed away, he had 1,500 rabbis who were following him, who were each community leaders of their own. So he created 1,500 community leaders who were mimicking his behavior and what he was doing and following his learning. The New York Times wrote a piece on him. And they said, okay, now that this rabbi is dead and there's nobody who's going to take over him, the entire community will be dead after 20 years. So 20 years after his death, there's going to be no more following. That's what they predicted.
Did that turn out to be true?
We are 28 years later, and there are 7,000 rabbis.
So who follow that approach?
Yeah.
All right. So
that to me is mind blowing.
Well, and this is the important thing to remember is that the rabbi that started it all was following a rabbi himself.
That's correct.
And what he did was bring his followers to that following.
That's right.
And because that following outlived him, those people kept following that even after he passed on.
Right.
Now, and this is very important. Listen to me very carefully if you don't pick up anything else. People don't follow people. People follow what people follow.
Right.
That's how it works. If I do fall in love with you guys, and you guys are wonderful and you're great friends, I like you both a lot. Ultimately, it's going to be the way you live your lives that I'm going to fall in love with. And the way you live your lives outlives you.
Right.
That would be what would continue in my heart and in my soul after you were gone. Or for that matter, after this podcast is over. What I pick up from you is going to change me. That's the nature of it. And if it's compelling and powerful enough, other people will see me doing that, and they will begin to follow you through me. Although none of us are actually following anybody, we're all following something bigger than all of us. And when you're searching for meaning, that's where meaning lives. Meaning lives there. It lives in outer space, in the sky, in heaven. It lives someplace beyond all of us. And role models lead us there, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
In our research, because I'm a quant, kind of, in our research working at NBC, we did these focus group exercises, trying to find out what it is that makes a television show successful, right? Remember, getting it all the way back down to the base level. How do you get 13 million people to watch a television show at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday or Thursday night? How do you do that? How you do that? We asked a whole bunch of people in focus groups to identify role models and to describe those role models for us. We got back hundreds of words. And we found that all those words fall into 4 groups of synonyms, only 4. Only 4. Now, Bork, you were mentioning Yermi and his behavior as he interacted with you.
Right.
Words like trust, companion, empathy, connection, those words are, in our model, green words. Green words are harmonious words. Follow the rules, get along with others. When you come to work at 9 o'clock in the morning and you stay until 5 o'clock when you're supposed to leave. If there's a rule that's written, you follow that rule. Those are words that those words all describe a role model who respects tradition, honors traditions, and follows tradition. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, Yermi, when you were describing the rabbi, the primordial rabbi, the first rabbi, the one who passed away in 96, way too young, I'm sure.
Right.
When you were describing that rabbi, you were describing blue behavior to me. Learned, deep thinker, scholarly, maybe a little analytical, doesn't take things at face value.
Right.
Also, maybe a little careful about what they say. Don't open your mouth and say anything until you've fully formulated what it is you're trying to express.
Absolutely.
Which means that person is probably more likely to use silence because silence is me thinking, and I don't want to say anything until I've thought it through. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So we got the green people who follow the rules and respect each other. We've got the blue people who are scholarly and analytical. Then there are the red people. The red people, the red role models, are role models that like to get to a point. They cut a conversation short. They net it out. They set deadlines, like it's got to be done by 5 o'clock on Friday. They're abrupt. And by the way, every one of these role models also has a downside. The green role model can be very stubborn. The blue role model can be very pedantic, maybe a little bit too talkative sometimes, maybe boring. The red role model can be pushy or demanding. And then there's the yellow role model. The yellow role model is an outside-the-box thinker. You never know what they're going to do next. They're always a surprise a minute. Often they're funny. Okay, and the downside of that is every now and then they'll oversimplify something, or they'll say something just to get an effect without really thinking it through. Okay, here's what we learned. In order for a television program to be successful, before the second commercial break, you must meet those 4 characters.
Wow.
You must meet those 4 characters. And the cool thing about it, this is the part I did, we had the model and it worked. So we were producing successful television programs for a tenth the cost because we made sure that every script we approved had those 4 characters in it. You could tell from the dialogue and the stage direction how they were going to behave, right? You knew that they complied with the formula.
Wow.
You ever watch Seinfeld?
Yep.
Okay, still around. That's back in the 90s, but still around in rerun. Jerry is green.
Yeah.
George is blue.
Yeah.
Elaine is red. Kramer is bright yellow.
As yellow as yellow gets.
Okay, those are the 4 characters that you meet in that program. Anyway, that my point is that was a conformant script, and it turned out to be an enormous hit.
Wow.
An enormous hit. Because and my part of it, my contribution of it was, I said, well, why? And they said, well, we don't care. So here we are back to the 7 whys, right? They said, we don't care. All we know is we're getting hits and we're not having to pay a lot of money for it. That's what you're supposed to stop asking now. And I said, but I can't. I have to know why. And they said, okay, we'll give you another couple of $100 or whatever it was on a budget. And so I ran some focus groups. And here's what I found. The conventional wisdom is that the character that you relate to is the reason why you watch the show. And it isn't. The character that draws you to the program is the role model that is least like you, that represents the most change to you. So people who are green, like Jerry, for example, tend to gravitate to people who are red, like Elaine. People who are very detail-oriented, like George, tend to gravitate toward people who are random and unpredictable, like Kramer, and vice versa. That opposites attract is actually what attracts you to the program. And it's what attracts us to each other. Because in life, we're always looking for people that are different from us. Because if we want to change, why would we want to change to be somebody who's like us?
Sure.
And everybody is seeking change. Everybody is. As change resistant as people might seem to be, they're really not change resistant. So does that all, do you track with all that?
Oh, yeah. Wow. I mean, like,
the whole thing really is, it's a miraculous proof of the fact that role models exist and they matter, and that they can be used. They can be, I hate to say weaponized, but that whole dynamic of role models can be applied in creative ways to engage people in an effort where they're all inclined to give 100% of it. Remember, getting people to watch a television program is one thing. I mean, that's 13 or 14 or 15 million viewers watching a TV program. My job as a project manager is how do you get 800 and let's say 150 people who don't report to me? I can't fire them. I can't give them a bonus. I can't even yell at them. How do I get 150 people? How do I get 150 cats to follow me? Well, they wouldn't follow me, but they would follow the red dot. So my job as a project manager was always to create an outcome for the project that was so compelling and so alive that people gravitated toward that outcome and fell in love with it. When they do that, they'll kill for you.
Yeah.
And you can, in fact, you're not even the project manager anymore. They are. That thing that they love is the project manager. Your job is to follow along behind them with pizzas and hats, throw parties for them, and thank them for the work they're doing. That's project leadership. That's the difference between leadership and management. So if that all makes sense, what I just did, what I just explained to you is something that's fundamentally wired into the way human beings work. It has been proven internationally. NBC is an international company. They've done this in multiple languages.
Wow.
And it works the same everywhere, all over the world, because that's how people are wired. Works
absolutely incredible.
I'm blown away. This is unbelievable.
And I've seen this work without even knowing that that's what was happening. I've seen this work, especially in education, like you referenced. I mean, this is what a good educator does on a daily basis. I mean, I'm doing it now with my students we have now. We literally just had a training on the nurtured heart approach to parenting and to teaching. And it's really about where is this kid now, but what is the behavior that we want to elicit in them? And most of the times it's opposites. And it's kind of every time that the child or the student does something in the direction that we want them to go, you give them that attention that they need for that, and then you almost ignore like the negative behavior. But this was also what I was doing when in the pre-show we were talking about my employment last year at the school. We were integrating these two programs. One of the reasons why it was so effective last year was because there was a certain individual whom I won't say who it was. There was a certain individual who was challenging we're just going to use this method because this is what we know and we've been trained on. and was pushing more for understanding why are we using that method, and and that's kind of this whole idea of digging deep, is understanding the individual as to where are they now, where are we trying to get them, where are they really capable of being, how do we turn, you mentioned how all these colors, these individuals have the negative and then they have the positive, and they can have those both, and it's about transferring one to the other. And that's essentially what we did last year, is we were able to take these students who were absolutely crazy. I had kids biting me and punching me and kicking me on a daily basis, and we were able to get them and flip that, because I didn't realize we were using this method, but the same thought process, and that's incredible. And again, why we dig deep is because you have to find what's really truly there. You have to find what can be. But I'm going to let you talk more about that, and Jeremy, please.
Well, no, the fun of it, Brooke, is you end up with this weird. I think we both had the same experience. GE, by the way, owned NBC Universal at the time, and GE does not stand for generous. Let's just put it that way. So GE, my number would float up to the top of the spreadsheet every year because I was a consultant. I didn't work for them. I worked as a contractor. And of course, the GE people would come along because they always sort in descending order by how much does it cost, and they kill the things at the top. Their first instinct was, well, how come we're paying this guy so much? Let's get rid of him. And there was always somebody who'd say, wait, not that one. And they'd say, why? And she, it was my advocate at the time, was a woman, and she would say, well, there's something he does, and I really can't exactly explain it.
Yeah.
But we need it, and we can't get rid of him. So go down to row number 2.
Right.
That's all there is to it. Go down to row number 2. And they would say, and that was so Bork. The experience you'd have is, I'm not exactly sure what this Bork guy is doing, and I really can't exactly put my finger on how he does it. But when I look at the end of the year at the difference he makes and the kids he works with,
right,
that difference is what we're paying him to do, even though we're not exactly sure how he's accomplishing that. I mean, the miracle of human behavior, and I'll tell you this, it's something that's free will, I don't think is very well understood by anybody. Obviously, I mean, we all know we have it. The real frustration in life is that everybody else has it too. It would be great if only we had it, but nobody has a monopoly on that. But there's a math to it. And it's actually simple to understand. And this is the fundamental difference between managing and leading. And leadership, by the way, happens everywhere. It happens in families. It happens in classrooms. It happens everywhere. Leadership happens if you let it. Yeah. But most people, I think, try to manage. And let me explain that difference. If you have a cell phone, and everybody does these days, then that cell phone is configured and equipped to do a certain range of things. And, as long as it's charged up, when you turn it on, there is a 100% probability it's going to do something. Right? 100%. And I'm going to turn this thing on, and it's going to be in my hand, and it's going to do something. I know it's going to do something. Well, in those things that it does, there's the probability it'll do what I want it to do. Right? And you could subtract from that the probability that it might do something stupid. It might do something that it might break. It may not do what it's supposed to do, which cell phones do a lot. I mean, they do everything really well except make telephone calls. That's one thing they don't do reliably at all. So here I am. I've got my cell phone, and I can surf the web, and I can do a billion different things with it. Every now and then, maybe I can call Bork and Jeremy and ask them how they're doing, depending on whether I've got a good cell signal or not. So there's really two probabilities. There's the probability that it'll do what I want it to do, and there's this other probability that it'll not do what I want it to do, that it'll disappoint me. Right? That's inanimate objects that don't have free will only have those two. So when I'm trying to make that phone better, making that phone better is about reducing the probability that it'll disappoint me. Lowering that probability, that error term. That's what I do. That's managing the phone. Humans have another probability. They have also the probability to do something that you never expected them to do, that you didn't ask them to do, that was wonderful. An inanimate object lacking free will can never do that. It can only do what it was designed to do.
Right.
That's it. I mean, you might discover a feature in it that you didn't know about, but that's not it spontaneously surprising you. That's you closing a gap in your own knowledge about it. right? So you take a child, let's say especially an autistic child, a child with special needs. Let's take that in particular. When we focus so much on making that child conform to a model we have in our heads, we're working on that first probability the way we'd work on perfecting a cell phone.
Wow.
But the second probability, that probability that child might do something wonderful that we never expected, if we're so focused on squashing that first probability that we never allow that second probability to happen, then we've failed in our mission. You have to allow yourself to catch people doing things right. You can't just focus on catching people doing things wrong. There has to be more to it than just disciplining. And that, to me anyway, is a miracle of a human interaction. We have to allow that the people around us may do amazing things. And we have to be prepared to respect, honor, and recognize that when it happens. Because if we don't, we'll get less out of each other. We'll end up with tanks in the Ukraine. I mean, everything that's going on the world stage today is exactly because we're so focused on managing that first probability that the miracle of human life becomes irrelevant to us. We're not even paying attention to that anymore. And that's how we end up with problems like that. And problems like that in families, if that makes sense. So there is a kind of a mathematical basis to all this. And, I hate to quote, believe me, putting equations up on podcasts is probably a dangerous road. But this one only has two coefficients in it. And getting back to television, the miracle of getting 19 people to watch something is to reinforce in them that what they're about to watch may surprise them. The things these people are going to do will not be things that you can expect they're going to do beforehand. They are going to do things that you don't expect. That's one of the reasons why you watch. So I'm looking for those 4 people using their free will in interesting, creative ways, interacting with each other, doing the magic of human life in front of me so that I can, tomorrow when I'm with my friends, talk about it over the water cooler. And that gets my friends to want to watch it next Thursday night. And before you know it, you've got a whole community of people following the antics of these 4 people on Seinfeld every Thursday night at 9:00. And it grows from literally a couple of 100,000 to a couple of million to 20 million over a period of a year and a half, 2 years. That's how quickly it grows. And it's all the joy of living. Everything is about the joy of living. That's what it's all about. So, hey, we just found a way to make that work. And the brand and culture alignment toolkit, which I haven't even talked about, my commercial proposition, that is all based on that. I took everything that I learned there, and I thought to myself, if you're going to be working with a company, a group of people, a family, and you want to engage that family in something, you want to create that red dot that draws them all so that they all want to work together on something, how do you do that? And that's what I do for a living these days. And it's fun. It really is.
I love it. Yeah. And I mean, I'm just going to talk to the audience for one quick second about this.
Sure.
This is here, why we chose. Number one, when I met Al, I said, this guy, I cannot live with myself if Al doesn't show up onto a show that I will one day put on, because I mean, like I'm blown away that this guy is just unbelievable. I mean, I'm looking at the comments here, and too many even to pull up just to highlight, everybody's loving it. And this is something we knew. And I had to wait on pins and needles to have you here, Al. And we chose the 7 whys because I knew this had so much to do with it. When Al and I met, I think the first time and the second time, we shared so much in common, and we shared, the love of entertainment, and how do we take these lessons and how do we motivate people, and my whole business is also built on that. We have a common role model in a sense, Viktor Frankl. We have a lot of these kind of commonalities where our propositions are very much aligned with that. And Al and I, we couldn't agree more about it's, the problem we are seeing, especially now that there's this new term, the Great Resignation, and then the reset, and all these names that people are throwing around. Al and I had this discussion much before these names were coming out. Remember, Al?
We did.
We spoke about this.
And everybody's opinion is that somehow COVID caused it, and COVID didn't.
Oh, please.
COVID actually just exposed it. I mean,
Right.
the frustrations people had with their work lives. I mean, first of all, it's just life. There's no such thing as your work life and your life. You are living a life. Work is part of it.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous. And if you compartmentalize it to the point where what you do during the day is different from what you do at night, then of course you're going to have a great resignation. All anybody ever really needed was permission to resign, which is what they got from COVID. But they had wanted to do this for a long time. And
this has been
people
cooking.
have been unhappy. People have been unhappy and unfulfilled and lacking meaning for a long time.
That's it.
If we connect on anything, it's definitely that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, that's why this topic was so important, to have that conversation. And just to very quickly recap, it was this model that NBC, what it was, that they used was very, very powerful. And, I was blown away that it was that simple. When Al told me the first time, I was like, isn't that common sense? Like, isn't that like, duh, right? And I mean, I was using that in my business without even knowing that that's what I was doing. I had no idea that this was even a thing. Like, I just thought that this was like common sense. And, just to give that as an example, yesterday and today, two completely different clients, right? One's a major corporation and another one is just a business professional, but we were talking about their home life, their family dynamics. And I'm using the exact same tactics between a big, massive corporation that has, a couple of hundred employees and this, 5 family member group. Okay. And it was the exact same tactic. It was the exact same thing, using these, these models and these people, and really just telling them, you could be blue in your face and you could be telling your employees all you want to, motivate them or whatever. But the bottom line is, they're watching how you're acting.
Absolutely.
How are you acting? Are you the role model that they want to follow, that they want to come to work? It doesn't matter if you have 100 employees. It doesn't matter if you have 2 kids. The same thing.
Absolutely.
Okay?
It's the same thing.
And they're just watching you the whole time. And that's really what this whole discussion was about, and why these, 7 whys is what we're talking about here, which we'll get into the last question in a second, why 7. But it's really about that whole idea of, you have to dig deeper. It's more than just what's at the surface of making money or whatever it is. NBC was trying to make really freaking good shows, and they did. Yeah. And nobody knew how they were doing it, right? And
it was so simple. It was really, you're right.
They just dug deep into the characters and into what really mattered, in a sense. Yeah. And they gave the viewer some kind of meaning or purpose, in the sense of, I connect to that person I'm watching, and that's ultimately what hooked them. That's ultimately what hooks millions of people.
So to wheel this all back, because I know that the program ends in like 10 minutes. So, but it won't take more than a couple of minutes to explain this. To take that and make it work for a family, or make it work for a department inside of a company. I mean, and it really, literally, to make it work for the 2 of you in your partnership, right? It is you ask a question that neither of you knows the answer to, but you both realize is important to answer. And so you work at it together. So our question is, think about this whole family, and think about a family. Think about this whole family as though we're a single person. Try to imagine that your whole family, all 12 kids, you and your partner, and however many kids you have, try to imagine that your family were a person, a single person that somebody could meet at a party. What would that person be like? This family were a person that could go to that I could introduce to. Would this person be a learned kind of a person? Would this person be a careful and empathetic, sympathetic kind of a person? Would this person be a goal-focused and driven person? What you get out of that is, have you ever heard the expression, boy, those people really drank the Kool-Aid?
Yeah.
There are 4 flavors of Kool-Aid. The red Kool-Aid makes you goal-focused and determined. The blue Kool-Aid makes you want to do your homework. Measure twice, cut once. Don't make any mistakes. The
Mm-hmm.
green Kool-Aid makes you comfortable with people and community oriented. And the yellow Kool-Aid makes you a little crazy. Makes you want to get a lampshade and put it on your head. Right? Every family, every company has a water cooler that has a mix of those 4 flavors in it.
Yeah.
Those 4 flavors are the Kool-Aid that people drink when they join this team, firm, company, family.
Yeah.
And the onboarding process, and that is the role model. We call it a role target. That's the pattern of behavior that identifies the best of who we all want to be. And it guides us as we make our individual plans to be more like, it's that, what would Jesus do? Except it isn't Jesus. Every group, every team has a Jesus, conceptually. Somebody that guides them invisibly.
Yeah.
That represents who we all want to be more like. If we just knew that person better. That question, what are we like when we're doing our best work on our best day to keep all our promises and deliver and achieve all of our goals? That question it took a long time to formulate that and to get it to work in front of a bunch of focus groups. So that question identifies that role target, starts the conversation that gets there. Some families are very focused on academic excellence. Other families are very focused on community service. Other families are very focused on entertaining, throwing parties, having a good time. No judging of any of them. None of those purposes is any more worthy than any of the others. They're all worthy purposes. What makes the family a family is that they all have the same one.
Sure. Absolutely. Wow. I love it. Love, love, love it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so just a quick thing. One thing, we have to invite all our audience members to tomorrow night. We have the clubhouse. We want to hear what you guys are thinking, what you guys are talking. I mean, there's so many golden nuggets flying here. I mean, at this point, is there even a metal more expensive than gold? Because that's what I feel here. Like diamond nuggets, or I don't know what's going on here at this point. It's unbelievable.
Atomic number 45, rhodium. It's more expensive.
There you go. I wouldn't have known. So rhodium.
I looked it up.
There we go. But this is unbelievable. I mean, and we believe that everybody else also has some incredible knowledge, some incredible background, some incredible inputs, and we would love to hear what you guys are saying. So please show up tomorrow to the clubhouse, 7:00 p.m. We're going to be sharing the links very soon about how to get there. We would love to hear your thoughts and everything. And we are going to wind this down with the final question of, what is the power of 7 and why are we calling it the 7 whys? Al and I, we had this discussion a little bit in the back room before, that this exercise is built by, actually go ahead, Al, you explained it, the Nobel winner.
Richard Feynman won his Nobel. They asked him, how did you win the Nobel Prize? And he said, by asking why over and over again. For him, it was 5.
Right.
And he said, you get to the deepest truths in nature by just asking why over and over again. That repeated process is the secret to knowing something deeply. Really. And that was, and you don't have to be a mathematician or a chemist or a physicist, or it's not the kind of thing that pre-verbally, children ask, what is it that makes children stop asking this question? I don't understand. On that day that they stop asking this question, they're not children anymore.
Right.
And that's the shame of it. That's an unfortunate aspect of the loss of innocence in childhood, is you stop asking this question over and over and over again. It comes naturally to kids.
Right.
And if you follow Richard Feynman and go look at, he is like a 9-year-old the guy lived the life of a 9-year-old and won a Nobel Prize in physics.
Mm-hmm. It's incredible. And yeah, so we were talking about that, and what I effectively did with this and a little bit extra research was I added 2 more whys to this 5 why system. And the reason why I added these 2 more whys was simply because, number one, we have to dig for a deeper meaning. There's still something that drives us. There's still something that pushes and guides us. And Baruch and I, one of the exercises that we did was the 7 whys, and it, Baruch had helped. Baruch said that it helped him tremendously. Baruch, what was the last why? What was the last question? What was the 7th, in a sense?
You're asking the question or the answer? Because I don't remember the question, but I remember the answer.
Go ahead. What was the answer of the seventh question? What were we trying to get to with the 7 whys?
Because this is who God created me to be, and it's who you are at your core. It's everything, and it's really, like Al was saying, it's not what you do. It's who you truly are at the very core, and it's something that's been covered over through years and through exposure and through all this other stuff that's going on. But that's what it is. It's that
Exactly.
end of the day, that true essence, and that's, again, coming from an educator's standpoint. When you're dealing with kids, but also as a spouse, as a partner, as a parent, as a sibling, you always have to try and ask, who is this person really at their core? And what is all that stuff that's kind of covering over them? And how do we remove that? Why are they behaving that way? Why did they say that thing to me that way? In a way, we always have to take ownership over any interaction, positive or negative. Not taking blame, but we have to take ownership to really understand it. But that, to me, that was the biggest thing there, was that with that exercise, when we got to number 7, where my response was, because this is who God created me to be, that makes it definitive. That makes it solid. I'm blanking on the words, but that is what kind of seals the deal. Like all that you've led up to, I want to do this, and this is what I'm going to do, and here's why, and here's why. Well, why? It's because it's who God created me to be. But this is it. Like that is, it's the stamp. It's the seal of approval. It's the seal that we need to say, like, this is the focus. Because if you have that, if you can get to the end of those whys, you can get so clearly defined as to the type of person you are, and that underlying understanding, and then go a different direction. There's something else you got to work on.
Right.
Critical. I mean, it's also the basis of your partnership, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's where the whole partnership came from.
Yeah, actually, it was through the 7 whys that Baruch and I did that we like, I just said, wow, that is such a profound, journey, and how he got to his, well, this is what God created me for. And I was like, you know what? I kind of want to join in on this journey. I have a similar why, and I would love to collaborate together, and I would love to do work together. And that's ultimately it. When you have these 7 whys very well defined in your team, in your family, in your life, in your anything, that people just buy in out of inspiration, not motivation, but out of inspiration. They're so inspired by what you're doing. And it's just this, like, well, why else am I here? Like, why else am I on this planet Earth for? And when you have that buy-in, when you have that loyalty, then you practically have anything you want. And that's ultimately what the seven whys is all about. And why I added the 2 more whys is to ultimately get to that final answer of, like, well, there's no other why. There's just nothing else, other than this is what I'm here for. This is what I'm born for.
This has been, Al, thank you so much, because this is another one of those shows that it's going to take me a very long time to process. I feel like we've only touched the tip of the iceberg. Looking at the comments coming up, first of all, thank you to all those, I've got some names here. I can see, Gracie, Anthony, Ghost, Rick, Raziel's on as well. There's so many people here that have just gotten so much value from what you've added. And there's some really amazing takeaways. And, I'm looking forward to doing the recap. And again, everybody, join us tomorrow on the Clubhouse, because that's your opportunity to shine. That's your opportunity to give your input. And we always love hearing from you guys and from you girls and ladies and gentlemen. But Al, again, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, for sharing with us. I'm gonna have to be doing a lot of thinking because this really is, and there are so many ways that what you taught can be applied, in family and business and dating. That's a topic Jeremy and I are talking about now, relationships and things like that. There's so much value. So anybody you hear who's watching live, watch the recap. If you're watching the recap, watch it again. Join us on Clubhouse. Look out on Friday for the end of the article. Thank you. And of course, any questions, comments, anything that you gained from it, reach out to us at exceptionallyirresistible@gmail.com. And before we sign off, Al, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, to learn more about what you do? Anything? Oh, I see a cat. That's where the example came from. The cat.
Oh yeah, no, that's
tangent.
Easiest.
How do people find out more about you, basically?
We will also put the links in the article, by the way. We will have the links, but just in case, you know.
Oh, good. No, I appreciate that. My email address is al.cini@getbcat.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. There aren't that many Al Cinis on LinkedIn. I think it's just me. So if you just go to Al Cini on LinkedIn, send me a connection request. I'm happy to accept. And thanks to you two are really exceptionally irresistible. And I've really appreciated the opportunity to connect with you guys and with your audience. Thank you for this.
Likewise. Okay, and that does conclude today's episode. You know, this was again so much fun, incredible. We are at our hour, at an hour hit. Whenever we are on an hour, we do also give gifts to our audience members. We will be giving out. We're going to be raffling off a free session of the 7 Whys. Either by myself or Baruch, one of us are going to be conducting that 7 Whys. If you email that email, we will be choosing one of the people who are going to be reaching out, and we will offer that free session. It's about an hour session or so of the 7 Whys. And again, if you need any information that you don't see the article and you want to know how to reach Al, email us. We'll also connect you guys and everybody. But other than that, look out for the article, and you're gonna have all the highlights of Al over here, the most incredible. I'm just so honored by your presence.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm honored by the invitation. Happy to be here. Such a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much, and we will see you tomorrow at the clubhouse, and next week, same place, same time. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Perfect.